Most beautiful country you may ever see. The opportunities were good. I went on sign with Wyoming.
My first plane ride ever was to Laramie, and it was such a bumpy ride going across the mountains that when the guy said we were about to land, and I just said, where?
When I stepped off the plane in Laramie, there was nothing around. We're way out in nowhere. You know, I didn't see any buildings and certainly not people. Oh my God, I thought I had made a mistake.
I took a bus over 13 hours to Laramie. When I got there, I assumed that they're gonna love me because I'm gonna love them. Then, of course, later I found out that that was not true, that not everyone loves everyone.
There are a lot of my friends I never shared the history with. It just was something that was a part of me, that was a part of just my life, and it remained that way for years. You know, a decade and a half probably. And then I began to share it.
Wyoming is that uniquely American West combination of vastness, isolation, and independent spirit. And in the mid-1960s, it was a football oasis for a group of African-American players. While they knew nothing of their destination, they were certain the equality state gave them the opportunity for a better life. Then, the 14 African-American members of the varsity squad stood up for what they thought was right. No one predicted what would come next. Certainly not on the campus of the University of Wyoming, where football was king and civil rights turmoil seemed a million miles away.
Wyoming football was always really a favorite of everyone. From all over the state, when there's a game in Laramie, people travel, and some distances, 6-7 hours drive for the football game.
It's something that we all share. We all hunt, we all fish, and we all follow cowboy football.
It unified everybody. And this is a tough state in that regard because everybody's so isolated and so spread out. But it was the source that connected everyone, whether you're a politician or whether you were a rancher. You wanted to be involved with Wyoming football.
It was another banner year for the Cowboys, one in which they earned national recognition and finished as the 16th ranked team in the nation.
In 1961, Cowboys football was at an all-time high. They had won the 1958 Sun Bowl and 4 straight conference titles. But at the end of the 1961 season, head coach Bob Devaney left Laramie for Lincoln, Nebraska, and the famed Cornhuskers. Hoping continuity would maintain success, Wyoming turned to defensive coach Lloyd Eaton.
We were really brokenhearted that Devaney left because he meant so much to the school. And you automatically go, well, how will Lloyd Eaton be?
He was charismatic. When he came in, you knew he came in. He was a big man and a big voice.
He had a nickname amongst the football players. They called him Lord Eaton. He expected a lot of himself, and he expected a lot of the people that were around him.
Lloyd, everybody knew, was intense, a very tough-minded guy, very Wyoming type of guy, extremely disciplined and didn't tolerate getting out of line.
Every manager, every owner of a bar had a picture of the football players. And if you were caught in a bar, they would call Eaton. Nobody wanted that.
He had the most lasting and deep impression on me in this whole scenario of recruitment. Out of all the other coaches and other places that I visited, he had a very powerful presence.
As Eaton was putting his own stamp on the Cowboys program, America was changing.
They came from all around the West to pour through the streets by the tens of thousands.
You have to build a movement so strong in this country that if one black man is touched, every black man will rise up.
And even in remote Laramie, Wyoming, Eaton's coaching style would soon clash with the issues that gripped the rest of the nation.
We want black power! We want black power!
We had determined in the mid-1960s that if we were going to control our own resources, if we were going to have some input in managing our own affairs, even in these, quote, desegregated circumstances, then we had to begin to step up and speak up.
As waves of protest pounded the nation, African-American athletes in colleges across the country joined in, taking a stand against inequities they viewed on their teams.
In football, of course, you had to be a receiver, a running back. You could be a defensive back, but if you wanted to play middle linebacker, forget it. If you were injured in football, the chances that you would get the same type of consideration and treatment and so forth as a white athlete was zero. And it was very, very seldom in the 1960s that black athletes would be housed with white athletes.
As far as the white coaches are concerned, they've done these African-American athletes a huge favor by even, making it possible for them to attend this university and get this scholarship. Now it's the responsibility of that African-American athlete to basically be obedient and subservient, to my wishes and respect my authority, regardless as to, what your peers are saying and what's going on in society.
The protests sparked different reactions across campuses. At Michigan State, the Spartans hired their first African-American assistant coach. But at Indiana, 10 black football players lost their scholarships.
We were aware of it. I mean, we didn't live in a bubble, and certainly we weren't insulated from it. We just saw it as a sign of the times.
At Wyoming, Lloyd Eaton recruited African-American players in numbers. The locker room was harmonious. The racism many players had experienced elsewhere in their lives was not an issue in Laramie.
Never had a problem. We didn't all hang out together, but we knew each other, and we were in each other's corner.
We all had a common goal, and that was to win football games, to play the best we could play. There was none of that racial unrest initially, none of it. Now, later on, there was racial unrest, but prior to the 14, there was none.
Right down the middle. I didn't go to Wyoming, I was sent to Wyoming. It wasn't a choice that I had. My fate took me there. And it took me there to do and experience exactly what I have. I'm just thankful that I was selected to be with the other 13 guys to have that experience and be able to make that contribution to the rest of society.
Lloyd Eaton built on the foundation laid by Bob Devaney. But by the mid-1960s, he had fielded only mediocre teams. Then, in 1966, everything changed.
Jim Kick gets it, guarding the final 8, and the Cowboys lead at halftime 13-0.
Well, 66 came along, and the team had a great year, went to the Sun Bowl.
Then Jerry Marion fakes the Seminole secondary out of position, takes the toss for the tying touchdown.
It was a huge thing for Wyoming to have that kind of a season.
The Cowboys remain undefeated in bowl play with a well-earned win over Florida State in the 32nd annual Sun Bowl.
The following season, the Cowboys went undefeated and achieved the extraordinary for a team out of the Western Athletic Conference, a trip to the Sugar Bowl.
Here's Governor Stanley Hathaway of the state of Wyoming. Dr. William D. Carlson, president of the University of Wyoming, is caught in a joyous mood. Co-captain Jim Kick and head football coach Lloyd Eaton of the Wyoming Cowboys.
Most people in the country didn't even know where Wyoming was, and now they're going to be in New Orleans playing in a Sugar Bowl game. This is amazing. That really brought the fame and fortune to our program, and it was the highlight for months.
It's first and goal for Wyoming, and Toscano hands to Kick, who swings left for a yard and a touchdown.
Here's Wyoming playing LSU in a major bowl game. It established a level of respect for the program that was national.
Despite falling to LSU 20-13, the 5th-ranked Cowboys had arrived. From 1966 to 1968, Eaton's program went 27-5, with 2 10-win seasons.
He made a difference. He brought prominence to our team. We were just like Alabama, and we were just like USC.
He was winning, he was successful, he had a demeanor that commanded respect. The people of Wyoming responded to that.
People loved the players, loved the way they played. Lloyd always handled himself extremely impressively in press conferences and when he was interviewed.
Cowboys, with their hustle, their hard-hitting, determination, brought some of the finest football to the Rocky Mountain area that we've had the privilege of seeing in a long, long time.
A total gentleman. And so, yeah, he was extremely popular.
If he ran for governor, he would have been elected governor. No sweat. He could walk on water as they were concerned. It came with the territory, it came with his success.
The 1969 roster included 14 African-American players from across the country. The overall talent on the team led some to believe this could be the greatest squad in Wyoming history, and all of them were determined to be a part of it.
The total focus was to go to another bowl game and win it. I mean, that was evident from the beginning, practice. Every team they played against, they knew for a fact they were in for a fight, and we're going to bring it to them.
The idea of Wyoming football being a dominant force in the football arena, that idea's time had come. And Lloyd Eaton was at the helm, and all of the crew, everybody, from the line coaches down to the water boy, were all pulling in the same direction.
That was evident in the first game of the season, as Wyoming defeated Arizona 23-7 in the home opener.
Sophomore safety Jerry Berry intercepts and goes all the way. 88 yards for the score, 20-0 Cowpokes.
The following week, the Cowboys found themselves down at the half against Air Force.
We all went into the locker room. He wasn't ranting and raving at all. You could just see everybody going, oh, here he comes. He walked into the locker room and everybody's sitting there like, with their heads down. And he just looked at everybody and looked at the coaching staff and said, you know what you have to do, and walk right out. That's all he had to say. The entire atmosphere, complexion of the team, you could sense the changes, instant changes.
Gary outfoxes the Falcon defense, looping this 2-yarder to Taylor for the TD, Wyoming 27, Air Force 18.
The Cowboys rallied in the second half to defeat the Falcons. With the momentum from that win, they crushed their next 2 opponents by a combined score of 76-12.
Intercepted by Berry at the 24.
What was big is people would get on the telephone on Monday night. Did you see where the Cowboys are ranked now? They're all excited about seeing what was going to happen.
He finds Griffin open for a 1-yarder to complete the 66-yard march.
By the middle of October, they sat at 4-0 and ranked 12th in the country.
The expectation was that we could go all the way. We thought we could do that. And I think the team thought they could do that. And I think the state thought we could do that we could really do something on the national scene.
We could have whipped Ohio State, we could have whipped USC, we could have whipped the big boys, and we knew it.
Everybody felt like, well, this could be the year, undefeated. Who's in the way to stop them?
We were thinking get past Arizona State if we can, and Houston with the great Elmo Wright. Baby, we're thinking Sugar Bowl. We're thinking big things, and why not? We hadn't lost, and we were rising in the ranks.
Everybody was pretty excited about the season ahead of us, with one fly in the ointment, and that was BYU.
In the late 60s, BYU athletics increasingly became a target for protests over the Mormon Church's racial policies.
The Mormon faith had a ban, a prohibition that kept black men from holding its priesthood and prevented black women from going into the temple. Mormons conceptualize blackness based on Cain murdering Abel. God cursed Cain with black skin because Cain murdered his brother, Abel. And there you have the birth of the black race.
The University of Texas El Paso, the track team was aware. San Jose State, for example, that made them rethink who they were playing against. And, not only in terms of the players, but more importantly, the institution and what that institution represented.
This was something that we did not need to abide by or support.
In the days leading up to the game against BYU, the leader of Wyoming's Black Student Alliance spoke with several players on the Cowboys team.
He proceeded to tell us that the Mormon religion does not allow blacks to hold the priesthood in the Mormon church. And in kicked my consciousness, my responsibility. What is my responsibility now that I have that information?
In addition to anger at the racist policies of the Mormon Church, many Wyoming players felt a simmering sense of injustice that lingered from the BYU game at Provo the previous season.
As soon as the play would be over, this guy would try to hit me in the back of my legs, or he would call me out of my name. And he did that continuously. I went to tell the official. The official told me, hey, shut up and play ball.
We beat them. Game's over. Normally, you go and shake hands or do something. They're gone. I mean, literally, there's a ghost town across the field, so we're wondering what's going on.
And as we walked off, just as we touched the end of the field, the sprinklers came on, just as we got off the field. So we knew someone had to be there watching. And as soon as we got off the field, I guess they wanted to wash them down. That's what started this whole thing with me. We weren't fighting a religion. We weren't protesting a people. We were protesting the attitude. What was happening to us on the field.
All this is festering. We have been thinking about it, not collectively, independently, and then we got together and then started to have dialogue.
Some of those ill wills certainly rolled over to 1969, no doubt about it. One camp had to do with all the name calling and how the field was sabotaged the year before. The other one was the not allowing blacks to elevate themselves in the Mormon church. That blended into the whole narrative, and that, yeah, we need to do something in sympathy. Be it wear something on our jersey, wear something on the helmet. We chose a black armband, and we chose a black armband with a 14 on it.
On the Thursday before the BYU game in Laramie, the Black 14 agreed that Tri-Captain Joe Williams would go talk to Lloyd Eaton. They wanted his permission to go ahead with their black armband protest against BYU and the Mormon Church.
Eaton delivers the word. Don't wear those armbands on the field Saturday. Okay? But I have a question or two that I wanted to ask my head coach, my father away from home, that man who's supposed to be our driving force and the one who looks out for us. What's wrong with the question?
After much discussion, the players decided to approach Eaton again. The next day, the entire Black 14, wearing their armbands, went to his office.
Jay Berry and I was walking, and I remember Jay came back and he was looking at him. They called me A.E. McGee there, and he said, A.E., what do you think is going to happen here? I said, man, we're going to lose our jobs. I said, we're going to lose our scholarship. He said, really, do you think so? I said, yes. That's how that coach operates.
We were all just strolling down the corridor to his office, and when we walked in to ask to speak to him, when he came out, I could tell by the look on his face that something was up. He wasn't going to be happy with us.
The 14 players were told to wait for Eaton in the stands of the field house.
We all sit in the little bleachers that, up at the top, and then the coaches come in and Lloyd Eaton comes in.
Eaton is at 12 o'clock and the coaching staff is at 2 o'clock. and they're not saying a word.
I remember him pacing a little bit and then turning around and saying, "Gentlemen,
We'll just save a lot of time and a lot of breath because you are no longer on this football team."
Those were the words that he stated before we could even open our mouths, that we are through.
When he said you're all off the team, I just lowered my head in shock.
And quickly it deteriorates into a tirade.
What you guys are proposing to do is defying me. Most of you come from split homes and broken families and don't even know who your fathers are.
You're not going to use the legislature's money to demonstrate. If you want to carry on this kind of action, then you can go to the Morgan States and the Gremlins, you know.
And he told us that, well, I guess now you fellas can go on Negro relief or colored relief. But he kept making derogatory statements like this.
And every time someone would try to put a word in edgewise, they were shot down. Shut up!
I did all this for you guys. And so he acted as if he was doing us a favor to take us as black athletes on this team.
There was no, let me hear your feeling, I've expressed my feeling. No, that wasn't an option. The option was, you guys are done. I'm done talking to you guys.
Well, you know better than to test me, you know, like he's really God.
You're going to throw away an undefeated season? You aren't going to talk about options? We want options. What will you agree to let us do? We were dumbfounded.
The thing that I remember that was very poignant, Fritz Shermer, that defensive coach, that drill sergeant, he was crying. It let me know that there was no coming back.
This changed the life of a lot of people. This is the original black armband that we wore. We made these up ourselves, put our 14 on it, and you know, you had to get it over your uniform and everything, and we wanted this 14 to be able to be seen.
It was Friday afternoon. I was sitting in our office on the other side of the field house here, and the play-by-play guy for BYU came in, Paul James. And Paul came in and he goes, "I hear all your black players have been kicked off the team." I had no idea what he was talking about.
Across a shocked Laramie campus, word spread like a prairie wildfire that all 14 African-American players had been kicked off the team.
How could that happen? That doesn't make any sense. In terms of the football team, we know what that's going to do. Without those players, we're not going to be the powerhouse. And that was a real sinking feeling, I think, for a lot of people.
I remember other players coming up to me and saying, "Phil, did you hear what happened? 14 players have been kicked off the team." And, you know, I was taken by that whole thing. I don't think people really knew exactly how to respond.
Eaton declared that the Black 14 had broken 2 sacred team rules: no participating in demonstrations, and no creating factions in the locker room.
Demonstrations, of course, do not just fit into an athletic program or football program. You're here to get an education through athletics or through football in this particular case. It's time-consuming, a lot of other things that we think detract from the reason they're here.
Later on Friday, a meeting was called on campus between the Black 14, the governor of Wyoming, Stan Hathaway, and the board of trustees to try and broker a resolution.
We were called to the big conference room. It's a huge conference room with mics all the way around, and then the speakerphone in the middle of the table, and everybody told how they felt.
I was up there at the meeting thinking, my God, what's going on here? How long are we going to do this? Still thinking in the back of my mind that we're going to play the football game tomorrow, that they're going to come to some decision that, okay, you got to get home to bed because we're going to play that football game tomorrow.
Lloyd Eaton wasn't bending. The regents, the lawyers, and the president of the university, you're not going to change my mind either. This is my rule, and this is how we're going to run this. End of story.
The only deal they made is that they were going to back Lloyd Eaton. That whole time we were there, which was till early hours in the morning, I believe 2, 3 in the morning, that the final say was they agree with Lloyd Eaton and what he did.
The press was outside the door as we were walking out, and someone said, "How was it?" And I said, "All white." And of course, that made the papers. All white.
I remember going to the game that day, and there was a demonstration out in the parking lot, and that is something I had never seen before.
Students were protesting. I think there was some of the faculty was protesting. So there was a big deal going on.
I found it invigorating because it was further reaching than we ever imagined. The word got out in spite of the action that was taken by the coach.
Some students had made signs, others had big posters and all kinds of things, and we were just handing out the leaflets. And in some cases, people would look at them and they'd ruffle them up and throw them at us, or a couple of our guys got pushed around a little bit. We were just wanting to let them know that we were on the side of these students that got kicked off of a football team because of their belief.
Despite the protests by Wyoming students and others sympathetic to the Black 14, the game against BYU went on as planned.
The attitude was just, hey, we're in a situation, we're doing the best that we can to control the situation, we're doing the best we can to rectify the situation. How it's all going to play out in the end, we don't really know. We just need everyone to do the best they can at the things that they're being asked to do, and we go on from there.
There was an atmosphere of animosity towards us, but I thought, if people just understood, we're just guys, we're just football players. We just want to play you in a football game. We could give a rat's what you look like, what your daily activities were like. All we know is we want to match up in a football game and see who comes out the best.
Some of the 14 watched from the stands as Wyoming ran away from BYU in a 40-7 rout.
We did not boycott the game. And so what better way to show that than to be present at the game? I like the fact that I'm letting people know Lloyd Eaton is not going to keep me away from this game, no matter what he does to me.
There was a little act of defiance there. We all would have preferred to be on the field, but we made a choice and we stood by that choice.
We all had our little routines and our jobs to do, but it did not feel right. It was all wrong, and how big an impact it would have nationally, I don't think we had an idea yet.
This letter was sent to our apartment in Laramie. The fans had very strong feelings that the athletes really had no rights. They did not consider civil rights at all. Everyone has special responsibilities to his benefactors. The tax-paying citizens of Wyoming have the right to expect your actions to be disciplined, restrained, and non-controversial. Signed, a devoted fan.
Wyoming University beat Brigham Young 40-7 in football over the weekend, but it did it without 14 of its players, all black.
In the aftermath of the Wyoming-BYU game, the story of the 14 African-American players exploded in the national media.
The dispute remains unsettled. Neither the coach nor the blacks will back down.
This is John Griffin, flanker for the University of Wyoming. Griffin won't be catching any more passes for the Cowboys. He and 13 other black football players were fired by Coach Lloyd Eaton.
It was a circus. It was a circus. You couldn't move. You literally couldn't move without tripping over wires, people.
Back then, there was a Look magazine, there was a Life magazine, there was Time is still around, Sports Illustrated. They all ran stories. We were in everything.
These people were here not for our prowess as a program, but for mistakes that were made, and that was very, very difficult to swallow.
What is more important, human rights or winning football? This is supposed to be the equality state, not the football state.
Do you think you may have been a little tough on these young men?
Well, it seems that this is the general feeling, John, but there has to be a reason behind every rule. There is no rule that's set up, of course, just for the sake of a rule.
It was something that eroded the program in his mind. It cut away the foundation of the program to have a group of people do something different than the team or against the team. That's how Lloyd looked at it.
I don't think it matters where the faction is developed. It doesn't work with the team. To answer your question.
The team would come first, and then the civil rights would be second.
No, sir. You're putting that word in your mouth.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get you.
The governor and the president of the university were seen, I think, as people that were just sort of swept away. You know, they had to support it. They couldn't say, Lloyd Eaton, you got to go.
The players are suspended for the balance of this football season.
So, in other words, the matter is closed for this football season.
It's closed for this season, yes.
A week later, the original rule was modified to allow protests, but not during football games. And the players could apply to be reinstated after the season if they chose to do so. While this didn't soothe national outrage at the treatment of the Black 14, much of Wyoming, the equality state, supported their winning coach.
The editorials all across the state were almost universally saying the same, that we have to have discipline and we have to support the coach, we have to support rules. Nobody stood up and said, did you listen to him?
For the vast majority of the campus, they're destroying our program. They're destroying something that has made us proud.
Personally, I didn't feel comfortable. I was getting threats on my life, as were others. Yeah, it's not a good feeling.
Our family ties was not as strong as we thought they were as a team. It was a definite division, black on this side, white on this side. And that was probably one of the most disappointing things that happened.
I think there were feelings both ways, okay? There were feelings that they were disappointed in the 14 players for taking their eye off the prize and doing something else. And there was frustration on the part of Coach Eaton that he, who is the leader of the program, was not able to get his hands around the situation and somehow save it.
After defeating BYU, Wyoming beat San Jose State to remain undefeated. But the Cowboys' record was not the story anymore. The San Jose State players had worn armbands in support of the Black 14. Wyoming, which had denied its own players the right to protest, was now the target.
With the way things were in this country, count on it. There were going to be protests, and people were going to be protesting Wyoming. It was every week, every game. We were the bad guys, and can't get around it.
The Cowboys lost their final 4 games. What was supposed to be the greatest season in Wyoming history ended at 6-4.
It hung over them. It had to have. The whole state had these expectations. And then it was over in a flash of anger.
You wonder what road you would have taken had the Black 14 never happened. And that's what I think of more than anything else. We were really good. It's not a braggadocious thing, you know. They had gotten together a hell of a group of athletes that year.
With few allies on campus and around the state, the Black 14 filed a lawsuit against Lloyd Eaton and the university, asking for the players to be reinstated immediately and seeking $1 million in damages.
We really didn't know what to do. We felt beaten down, I think, that everything that had been a possibility was now an impossibility.
With the lawsuit ongoing, most of the 14 looked outside of Wyoming to continue their football careers, only to find another dead end.
We were considered rebel rousers and black power advocates, and basically had been blackballed.
Coaches were afraid that you would cause that kind of dissension among their teams, that you would encourage their team to protest about something else, and they were unwilling to take a chance. even the teams that supported us.
We don't know how much was told to other schools, and we don't know how many agreed with what Coach Eaton did. So we were villains in a lot of areas.
Tony McGee was able to transfer to Bishop College in Texas, while 10 of the 14 never played another down of football. 3 players, including John Griffin, returned to Laramie the following spring and were voted back on the team.
We all had to survive. It comes a time, sometimes you have to survive to play another day. And so my whole thing was, I got to stay here to see if I can't get my degree. I have to make this work.
While the 14 faced uncertain futures, their protest had not been in vain. It sparked a demand for change around the Western Athletic Conference.
Demonstrations, protests, statements made before they even took the field, statements made after the game by athletes, by fans, by student body organizations. They're telling you in every form and fashion possible, you are despised. You are a racist organization that we disapprove of.
At Arizona State, when we came out through the bleachers, somebody spat a big loogie down and it landed right on my face mask. So we got spat on and stuff.
BYU became the ugly stepchild of the WAC there for a minute. It was making the WAC appear as though it was insensitive to race and insensitive to the needs of the black students.
The following season, BYU added its first African-American football player. But the fallout from the Black 14 hit no school harder than Wyoming itself.
Basketball, track, they all had difficulties, and it affected everybody. There was, I think, a feeling of paranoia for everybody. How are we going to be able to overcome this? Are we going to be able to overcome it?
In 1970, the Cowboys won just one game. Lloyd Eaton was relieved of his coaching duties and moved into an administrative role. He would never coach again.
I know how things go when you are a football coach and you're winning and you achieve some success and you start to believe in yourself and who you are and what you say, and that this is the whole reason for your success. And you got to be careful of that because it also can lead to your demise.
To have been on the precipice of greatness and had to have it crash down, I can see that he could be very distraught, and it changed him as a person, probably.
Although Eaton had been dismissed, the stain on the football program was not so easily removed. For a decade, the Cowboys were unable to recruit highly sought-after black athletes. They would have only one winning season until 1980.
It's very difficult to see anyone as a winner. In that respect, I think it's a tragedy that, you have something that's so good and doing so well, and then you lose that. And that's just too bad. It's sad.
For the Black 14, their protest was an indelible turning point in their lives. They went to Laramie to play football. They gained a harsh education in injustice. But it's a journey they would all make again.
My grandfather says to me, "Son, why did you get your head from under the white man's foot and do what you did?" And I looked at him and I said, "Grandpa, why would I only want my head from under his foot and not my whole body? I want my whole body from under his foot." And my grandfather rocked back and said, "I understand. I'm proud of you, son." And that's what he said. God rest his soul. But I'm sorry. That meant a lot to me for him to say what he said and make me feel that what I did was the right thing.
For most of us, it was the day that we became men. It was the day It was the day that we said, we're no longer boys. You're not going to control our lives. And it was the day that we just decided enough was enough.
Still, the question lingers about what could have been.
Yeah, I've thought about that. Yeah, over the years I have. Wow. We would have gone undefeated. Yeah, we were that good.
I'm not sure what would have happened, but I definitely believe it would have been better. I might have stayed and got my degree, which is always important. Who knows where you would have gone? Who knows what direction? I'm not unhappy with my life now and how it turned out. We have a wonderful life. It was an experience.
It kills me. 4 games? Are you kidding me? It kills me. And I've been blessed. Big time. Big time. But there's still that little something that's kind of going away now as I get older, but there's still that little something about what if? What if?